Welcome into the Husker247 post-practice podcast. I'm Mike Schaefer, joined by Michael Bruntz, Brian Christopherson. Gentlemen, we were over at the stadium on Wednesday. Nebraska finished up another practice. Mark Whipple spoke today. Sean Beckton spoke today. Several tight ends were there. Oliver Martin dropped by. Brant Banks. It was kind of a eclectic group of offensive players today. Bruntz, we will start with you. Give me one thing you learned from the media session on Wednesday.
Yeah, Sean Beckton was good. He has like half of his group hurt right now, but you're getting opportunities for A.J. Rollins, James Carney, probably the two notable guys that we haven't seen much from yet. But one comment in particular that he kind of made in a non sequitur moment was that Nebraska's offense has moved the ball with consistency on the ground in every practice that they've had so far this spring. And I believe he also added that not once this spring, talking about a full practice, has the defensive group gotten the better of the offense in the run game. So depending on your world viewpoint, that's either a really good thing or a reason to hit the panic button defensively. So I thought that was a nice moment of candor from Sean Beckton, but an interesting spring for him just with all the moving pieces and injured pieces they have.
So what is the Michael Bruntz worldview?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think Nebraska's defensive line obviously
You're splitting the baby.
That's what you're doing. Yeah. I'm just going to put it right on top of that fence. So yeah, I mean, you have a defensive line that's obviously limited in personnel and experience. I do think that there's something to the fact that getting a little bit more simple in the run game is probably helping things. And I think too, Donovan Raiola has really, I think captured the attention of this offensive line, and the line says they're playing well. You kind of have to take them at their word a little bit without being able to see it for yourself. But that moment of candor, and you kind of combine that with what we heard from Mike Dawson earlier this week, and I think the takeaway there is there's still a lot of work for Nebraska's defensive line.
All right. Brian Christopherson, we learned from Michael Bruntz that Nebraska is able to rush the football fairly well so far this spring. What did you learn on Wednesday?
I'll go with Oliver Martin. He made an appearance, and I think you guys will remember when Mickey Joseph first got here, his first media interaction. It kind of I don't know if it caught people by surprise, but it made your ears perk up when he said Oliver's a very good route runner. And it really had jumped out to him right away, and he really praised him. And Oliver Martin talked about how last year, remember, he had 103 yards in that opening game against Illinois, and it looked like he was really going to take off. He was battling a knee injury throughout that season, and he kind of expounded upon that and the difficulty of getting going with that sort of nagging him throughout the year. So you do have to sort of mix that into a story of whatever you thought about his season in 21, there's that piece to it. And he's healthy now, and he believes that if he's healthy, he's going to put up a lot of numbers in this offense. He flat out said that. He's a confident guy, and I think right now he's probably one of the starters at wide receiver. I think Trey Palmer's maybe a 1A guy in that room, but Oliver's right there as much as anybody. You're kind of talking about Trey Palmer, Oliver Martin, Alante Brown, Brody Belt, Omar Manning, and even Wyatt Lever got a mention in there. So that I don't know if I left someone out, but that's sort of your main cast of characters. But Oliver Martin, don't forget about him. That's what I would say of today's practice thing. He's going to be a big part of things.
Yeah, one of my bold predictions last year was that Oliver Martin was going to lead the team in receiving. That lasted for exactly 1 week. I don't know if I get any credit for that or not, but I might just I might recycle it again for this year. We'll see if it's any good. Is it less bold if I said that for 2022 or more bold when I said it for 2021?
I can appreciate a man that doubles down.
All right. I'm just going to go ahead. That article will get written sometime in like July, and we'll just copy and paste from last year, scrub out some of the 2021 references, and be good to go. It's one less slide I have to create for that thing. All right. So I learned that Nebraska doesn't think that AJ Rollins is a very good blocker yet. They're working a lot on AJ Rollins right now. He's getting a ton of reps. He had a comment basically saying that how he started this spring mentally versus the phone call that he got during spring break from Sean Beckton, basically saying, hey, I need you to be ready. You're going to get more reps than you can handle. He's kind of had to change where he's at mentally, and I think that's been a good thing for him. I think AJ Rollins has always been a bit of a curiosity for me because he was a guy that was a good athlete at high school that really struggled to throw the football when he was a senior. So he almost sort of went to waste for Creighton Prep as a tight end. A lot of people really wanted him to play defensive end because he was in the same class as Thomas Fedoni. And yet Sean Beckton, he even said this, Sean Beckton refused to give him up when he got to campus. So there was supposed to be a conversation about him potentially being in the defensive line room. And he said Coach Beckton just shut that conversation down immediately. So there is some real excitement, I think, for what AJ Rollins could be. He's getting a ton of reps this spring because of injuries with Travis Vokolek and Thomas Fedoni kind of out of the way. It moves him up a line, and he's using those reps to the best of his ability. And this is a guy that I think Nebraska likes a lot in the passing offense. But in order for him to play, he's got to get better as a blocker. I know, Bruntz, you were over there with Sean Beckton. Did he talk a little about AJ Rollins today?
Not specifically. His was more big picture about what's going to be asked of the tight ends. I think you're going to see more routes where the tight end is the first read rather than the third or the fourth. You're going to see more plays that are designed to go to the tight end. That's just something that has been kind of a hallmark of Mark Whipple's offenses. And Sean Beckton said, too, that in the run game, they're going to ask different things of the tight ends. He said, it's his words, that they're not going to ask tight ends to get in there and have to really blow somebody up. So I don't know what that means for Chancellor Brewington, who became famous for that last year. But that's a change as well that might allow for a guy like an AJ Rollins or a James Carney to perhaps contribute a little bit more early without having to kind of have the qualifier of, well, you still have to you have to learn how to block. So that's something that I know these tight ends are really excited about, being a bigger part of the offense. And I think when you have that, it kind of maybe kind of quickens the pace with which you improve things that maybe you need to improve, but you don't like to have to work on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. BC, you had a chance to go through the Mark Whipple audio. What did you learn from Coach Whipple on Wednesday?
There was a lot of nuts and bolts stuff in there. I think one thing people might be interested in is they're working a lot on the red zone offense this week. They Monday and Wednesday, and they're going to even add more on Friday. And he talked specifically, and I know you'll like this, about using those 6'5", 6'6" tight ends.
If Austin Allen gets a hold of what was discussed today at Nebraska's post practice, he's going to be really upset. He
can join the group of aggrieved former Nebraska tight ends, of which Ethan Carter is the president, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, who does that group fully include? Would you include Mike McNeil in there?
Yeah, I think Tyler Hoppus was probably pretty pleased with the way things went.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if Tyler Hoppus's 1 year in which he then became the barometer for whether any tight end could match his 400-some yards for the subsequent 5 years. I would love to know which tight ends fully fit in this thing I have pictured in my head where they're sitting in a room and there's donuts and they all kind of say hello to each other and they're recovering Nebraska tight ends. I like this. We're going to have to work on this a little bit.
Ethan Carter talking about like the 20 misfires where he would have scored touchdowns when he was open.
Ethan Carter talking about if bounce passes were legal, he would have been one of the best tight ends in the country.
Yeah. So there was that you would have liked. And there was also him pouring some cold water sort of on the hype around the spring game, which I appreciate.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Did you laugh when you heard that? I laughed when I was standing in the back of the room. No one else thought it was funny.
I think a lot of fans do get it, but sometimes in the media we don't get it. There's this buildup of like, well, who's gonna, in the spring game, who's gonna be the guy who like takes the cake and kind of, it's like you have to understand, and this was all Mark Whipple was saying. It's just another practice. It's for young guys to get out there in front of people. They have a ton of tape on these guys. This isn't making or breaking anybody if they have 108 yards in that spring game or if they have 19 yards. So I like the fact that that's been said before by coaches, but I thought he said it about as blunt as you could. So I like that part. And before we exit here, we're talking tight ends. A name I'll mention because it came up today too from Becton is and you'd have to say consistently over 2 years, Nate Borkacher has been a walk
as well, yeah.
the walk on from Aurora. Always pops up from Sean Becton. And they held him at 4 games last year to keep his red shirt because Sean Becton saw him as a high value guy to have another year of eligibility throughout the program and play that out. And of all the guys we're talking about, moving past the Vocalic, whatever is happening with Thomas Vidone discussion, I think Nate Borkacher is going to play, and he's going to be important to the equation in the tight ends. And I know that sometimes guys like him get lost because they weren't as heavily recruited, so we don't know their names as much for 3 or 4 years. But right now, he's probably amongst those young crop of guys. He's probably ahead of them if you go by Sean Becton, and he's been consistent on that for a year.
Yeah, Nate Borkacher spoke as well today, and he kind of talked about how he sort of had to become a leader pretty quickly. He talked about his relationship with Austin Allen and just, working with Sean Becton. And so I think he's just kind of a steady presence that Sean Becton, I think, is happy to have in that room. And I think right now Sean Becton's just happy to have a few healthy tight ends because as it tends to happen when Nebraska has a room where an injury starts, it just never seems to stop. And apparently his tight ends go around on that experience. Any final thoughts here, gentlemen?
Here's a cliffhanger from Brant Banks for you guys to end on. Even though Mark Whipple is throwing cold water on the importance of the spring game, Brant Banks was asked today about how Nebraska's run offense is different along the offensive line. And he said, I could try to explain it to you, but you just have to see it. So that's something to look for Saturday. Just get the binoculars out and just start looking for how things are different because Brant Banks says you're going to see it. It's apparently working so far this spring. So that's what you need to be watching for on the 9th.
All right, a little cold water and a little Kool-Aid. Nice mixture we got here today, gentlemen. It's we'll see which side the fan base wants to drink up the most. All right, we will be back with more podcasts this week. I know we have a Husker247 podcast coming here as well, so be sure to check that out. And as always, be sure to hit up Husker247 for all of our post-practice stories, recaps, recruiting as well. Plenty of going on. There's a visitor coming in on Friday. I'll be highlighting that on the website. Nebraska has an official visit set with O'Shawn Mathis. We'll be talking about that as well. So be sure to check out everything, and we'll catch you next time.